The station called Apex Prime floated in the void between stars, a massive structure built from materials that could survive anything the universe threw at it. It had been standing for 3,000 years, serving as the meeting place for the Galactic Assembly. Today, representatives from 400 species filled its grand chamber, their various forms creating a strange rainbow of colors, shapes, and sizes. Ambassador Lisa Chen walked through the tall doors, her simple gray suit standing out among the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor worn by others. 2 junior diplomats followed her, carrying data tablets and recording devices. The humans had requested this emergency session 3 weeks ago, and the assembly had finally agreed to hear them. The chamber itself was enormous, with seating arranged in circular tiers that rose toward the domed ceiling. At the center sat the Council of Seven, the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They had ruled the assembly for millennia, their decisions rarely questioned or challenged. Chen approached the speaking platform at the chamber's center. The lights dimmed slightly, focusing attention on her. She could feel thousands of eyes watching her, some curious, many dismissive. Humanity had only joined the assembly 40 years ago, making them practically infants in galactic terms. Honored members of the assembly, Chen began, her voice amplified by the station's systems. I come before you today to present evidence of illegal weapons testing by the Krathix Empire. These tests have occurred within 5 light years of 3 human colony worlds, in direct violation of Assembly Law 847. She activated her datapad, and holographic images appeared above the platform. They showed massive explosions in space, radiation readings that spiked beyond safe levels, and civilian ships that had been damaged by the testing. 17 civilian vessels have been damaged, Chen continued. 2 were destroyed completely, with the loss of 340 lives. We have sensor logs, survivor testimonies, and independent verification from automated monitoring stations. The Krathix have created a weapon that tears holes in space itself, and they are testing it near populated systems. The chamber filled with murmurs and chittering sounds as species discussed among themselves. Chen waited patiently, her face calm despite her racing heart. She had practiced this presentation 100 times, reviewed every piece of evidence, consulted with the best legal minds humanity had. The case was airtight. Supreme Arbiter Velthor, a being that looked like living crystal, rose from his seat in the Council of Seven. His voice echoed through the chamber like wind chimes in a storm. The Council has reviewed your evidence, Ambassador Chen, Velthor said. The tone was not encouraging. We find it incomplete. Chen felt her stomach drop. Incomplete? Supreme Arbiter, we have provided sensor data from 14 different sources, survivor accounts, and you have provided human interpretations of data, interrupted Council Member Zix, a creature that resembled a floating mass of tentacles. Your species lacks the scientific background to properly analyze such phenomena. What you call illegal weapons testing may simply be natural cosmic events that your primitive sensors misidentified. The chamber erupted in laughter. The sound washed over Chen like acid, burning away the careful diplomacy she had maintained. Her jaw clenched, but she forced herself to stay professional. We had the data verified by independent laboratories on neutral worlds, Chen said, struggling to keep her voice level. The Vorn Institute confirmed our findings. The Milat Science Academy confirmed our findings. Are you suggesting they are also too primitive? We suggest, said another council member, a reptilian being named Cross, that humanity is simply too young to understand the complexities of galactic politics. The Krathix are an established empire with billions of citizens. You are newcomers with barely 100 worlds. Sometimes the needs of the many must outweigh the complaints of the few. Chen stared at the council, disbelief written across her face. You are saying that because we are younger, our lives matter less? That the murder of our citizens can be ignored because we have not been in space as long as others? We are saying, Velthor responded, his crystalline form glowing brighter, that you need to learn your place in the galactic order. Every species goes through this adjustment period. In time, you will understand how things work. The Supreme Arbiter gestured, and new holographic displays appeared, showing human colony worlds highlighted in red. The Council has reached a decision, Velthor announced. For disturbing the peace of the Assembly with these unfounded accusations, and for showing disrespect to the Krathix Empire, Humanity will surrender 3 colony worlds as reparations. The worlds designated as New Tehran, Covenant, and New Budapest will be transferred to Krathik's control within 60 standard days. The chamber fell silent. Even the species that had been laughing moments before seemed shocked by the severity of the ruling. Those 3 worlds held a combined population of 40 million humans. They were established colonies, not frontier outposts. Chen felt something break inside her, some last thread of faith in the galactic order. She looked at the Council of 7, then at the assembled species, seeing them clearly for the first time. They were not wise elders guiding younger species toward enlightenment. They were bullies who had grown comfortable in their power, so used to being obeyed that they had forgotten what it meant to be challenged. "No," Chen said quietly. "Excuse me?" Felthor leaned forward, his crystalline face reflecting the chamber lights in strange patterns. "No," Chen repeated, louder this time. Her voice carried through the chamber, clear and hard as diamond. "Humanity will not surrender 1 inch of our territory. We came here seeking justice, and you have shown us that justice does not exist in this assembly. You speak of laws, but those laws only apply to species without power. You speak of peace, but that peace is built on the suffering of those you consider beneath you." She deactivated her datapad and picked up her briefcase, her 2 junior diplomats moving to join her. "Ambassador Chen, if you leave this chamber, you will be in contempt of the assembly," Felthor warned. "The consequences will be severe." Chen turned to face the entire assembly, her eyes moving across the tiers of alien faces. Some looked confused, others angry. A few seemed genuinely concerned. "For 40 years, humanity has tried to be good citizens of this galaxy," Chen said, her voice ringing out. "We have followed your laws, paid our fees, respected your traditions. We thought that by playing by your rules, we would earn respect and protection. Today, you have taught us the truth. There is no justice here. There is only power, and those too weak to enforce their own rights are crushed beneath those who can." She walked toward the exit, her steps echoing in the silent chamber. "Humanity came to you seeking justice," Chen called back without turning around. "We are leaving to find it ourselves. Remember this day. Honored members of the assembly. Remember that you had a choice, and you chose to make us your enemy rather than your equal." The doors opened before her, and Ambassador Lisa Chen walked out of the Galactic Assembly Chamber, followed by her delegation. Behind them, 400 species sat in stunned silence, the enormity of what had just happened slowly dawning on them. In the viewing galleries above, news crews from 1,000 worlds broadcast the moment across the galaxy. They captured the image of 3 humans walking away from the most powerful institution in known space. Backs straight and heads high. The galaxy watched, and in that moment, many began to feel the first stirrings of something they had not experienced in a very long time. They began to feel afraid. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself, carried by quantum communicators and hyperspace relays. Humanity had walked out of the Galactic Assembly. The images of Ambassador Chen's exit played on 1 billion screens, analyzed by countless experts and discussed in every corner of civilized space. Most species celebrated. The upstart humans had finally been put in their place, shown the natural order of things. On the Krathik's homeworld, the Emperor declared a day of celebration. Market analysts predicted a boom in real estate values for the 3 colonies humanity would be forced to surrender. Everything was going according to the plan that the Council of 7 had designed. But in a secure facility deep beneath the streets of Geneva, Earth's government was having a very different conversation. "Protocol Ragnarok is active," announced Defense Minister James Wu, standing before the emergency meeting of the United Earth Council. As of Ambassador Chen's exit from the assembly chamber, all human military forces have moved to high alert. Evacuation protocols are underway for all non-essential personnel in assembly space. The holographic display behind him showed a map of human territory, with hundreds of ships beginning to move. Trade vessels were returning home, diplomatic staff were being recalled, and military observation posts were powering up their weapon systems and preparing to withdraw. "How long until we are completely out of assembly space?" asked Prime Minister Sarah Okonkwo, her face lined with exhaustion. She had not slept since receiving word of the Assembly's decision. 72 hours for essential withdrawal, Wu replied. 2 weeks for complete evacuation of all human presence. But Prime Minister, I must stress that we need more time to properly prepare our defenses. If the Krathiks decide to move on our colonies before we are ready, they will move, interrupted Director Chen, Lisa's older brother and head of Earth's intelligence service. Our sources indicate the Krathiks are already mobilizing a force to occupy New Tehran. They view this as their right, approved by the Assembly itself. The room fell silent. New Tehran was home to 15 million people, many of them families who had lived there for 2 generations. The colony had forests planted by human hands, cities built with human dreams, and schools where human children learned and played. Then we ensure those colonies are empty when the Krathiks arrive, said Okonkwo firmly. Begin immediate civilian evacuation. Every ship we have, military or civilian, is drafted for transport duty. I want those worlds emptied within the week. And after that? Asked Admiral Richardson, his weathered face grim. The Assembly will not accept our refusal to hand over the colonies. They will send forces to compel us. Okonkwo looked at each council member in turn, her expression hard as stone. Then we show them what humanity does when pushed into a corner, she said quietly. We fight. Not by their rules, not in the civilized manner they expect. We fight to survive, and we make them regret ever threatening us. The orders went out within the hour. Across human space, the greatest mobilization in the species' history began. Shipyards that had been building colony vessels started constructing warships. Factories that made consumer goods were retooled for military production. Scientists who had been researching peaceful technologies were redirected to weapons development. The galaxy watched these preparations and laughed. Intelligence reports showed humans stockpiling what the other species called primitive kinetic weapons. Railguns and missile systems, technologies that the galaxy had moved beyond centuries ago. Everyone knew that energy shields could stop physical projectiles, that plasma cannons and particle beams were far superior to simple mass drivers. Let the humans build their toys, declared Krathik's war leader Vex during a broadcast. Our shields will stop anything they can throw at us. They are welcome to waste their resources. On news programs across the galaxy, military experts analyzed human preparations and found them laughable. One popular commentator joked that humanity was trying to fight a space war with slingshots and rocks. The segment went viral, watched by billions. But a few analysts, mostly from species that had studied human history, were not laughing. They looked at the patterns, the speed of mobilization, the grim determination in official human statements, and they remembered something important about humanity. They remembered that humans had evolved as persistence hunters, chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They remembered that humans had survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that had consumed entire continents. They remembered that humanity's entire history was one long story of refusing to quit. No matter the odds, these analysts tried to warn their governments, but no one listened. The galaxy had already decided that humanity was no threat, and nothing would change their minds. The Council of Seven issued official statements condemning human aggression and threatening sanctions. The Assembly voted overwhelmingly to support Krathik's claims to the disputed colonies. Everything was going exactly as the galaxy expected, right up until the moment it wasn't. The Krathik's strike force intercepted the last convoy leaving New Tehran exactly 13 days after the Assembly ruling. The convoy consisted of 40 civilian transport ships, protected by a small escort of human frigates. The Krathik's commander, eager to demonstrate his empire's power, ordered the attack despite the ships clearly broadcasting evacuation signals. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than 10 minutes. The Krathik's warships tore through the escort vessels and then targeted the civilian transports. They focused on the largest ship, a colony transport called the New Dawn, carrying 40,000 civilians, most of them families with young children. The New Dawn's shields collapsed under the barrage. Its hull split open, exposing entire sections to the vacuum of space. Emergency bulkheads sealed automatically, but whole decks were lost in seconds. The ship tumbled through space, bleeding air and debris. The captain of the New Dawn, a woman named Elizabeth Park, used her last moments to activate the ship's black box recorder. Her final transmission was brief, her voice remarkably steady despite the alarm screaming in the background and the sound of hull breaches. This is Captain Park of the New Dawn. We are a civilian evacuation ship. We broadcast our status clearly. They fired anyway. To anyone receiving this message, remember us. Remember that we were trying to leave peacefully, and they killed us for it. Don't let them say we were combatants. We were families. We were children. Remember us. The transmission cut to static as the New Dawn's power core failed. 40,000 humans died in the cold of space, murdered while trying to evacuate a world the Assembly had taken from them. The recording reached Earth 6 hours later. It was played before the United Earth Council in complete silence. When it finished, Prime Minister Okonkwo stood and walked to the window looking out at the city lights of Geneva. "No mercy," she said finally, her voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. "No surrender. No forgiveness. Send that message to every human world, every ship, every station. Make sure our people understand what we are about to do and why." She turned to face the council, and those who saw her expression that day would later say they had never seen such cold fury in a human face. "The galaxy wanted to teach us our place," Okonkwo said. "Let us show them what humanity does to those who murder our children." The message went out on all human channels, broadcast to every colony and station, downloaded by every ship and habitat. 3 words that would echo across the galaxy and change the course of history. No mercy, no surrender, no forgiveness. The countdown to war had begun, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The attack came without warning, coordinated across 12 star systems simultaneously. One moment, Krathik's military installations were operating normally, their commanders confident in their empire's superiority. The next moment, human fleets emerged from hyperspace at the edge of each system, weapons already hot and targeting solutions locked. The galaxy was watching through long-range sensors and news drones. They expected a quick skirmish, perhaps a few human ships destroyed as a lesson, followed by negotiations and human surrender. Instead, they witnessed something that would be studied in military academies for generations to come. The human ships moved wrong. That was the first thing Krathik's commanders noticed. Human vessels did not engage in the standard way, maintaining proper distance and allowing shields to regenerate between volleys. Instead, they came in fast and close, using gravity assists from planets and moons to build impossible velocity. At the Krathik's fortress world of Dex Prime, war leader Kesh watched his tactical display with growing confusion as human ships dove toward his defensive platforms. The platforms activated their shields, designed to stop energy weapons and plasma torpedoes. Then the humans fired their railguns. The tungsten slugs left the human ships at a significant fraction of light speed, each one carrying kinetic energy equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. The Krathik's shields, designed to disperse energy, did nothing against solid matter moving at such velocities. The slugs punched through the shields as if they did not exist and tore through the platforms like paper. "Impossible," Kesh whispered, watching his displays as platform after platform went dark. "The shield should stop physical projectiles. Our scientists assured us." "They lied to themselves," said his tactical officer, a young Krathix named Ven. "Or they forgot basic physics. Energy shields disperse energy, but mass is mass, and these humans remembered that." The human fleet split into smaller attack groups, each one moving with precision that suggested either perfect coordination or shared intelligence. They used asteroids as cover, executed gravity slingshots that subjected their crews to crushing acceleration, and demonstrated a willingness to take damage that no civilized species would consider acceptable. A Krathix battlecruiser managed to destroy one human frigate, scoring a direct hit that should have vaporized the ship. Instead, the dying human vessel used its last moments to accelerate directly toward the battlecruiser, turning itself into a kinetic weapon. The collision destroyed both ships, but the humans seemed to consider this a fair trade. "They are insane," Kesh said, watching the carnage unfold. "What species sacrifices ships like this?" "A species that has decided the price does not matter," Ven replied quietly. "A species at war." The battle for Dex Prime lasted 8 hours. When it ended, the fortress world's defenses were in ruins, its orbital installations destroyed, and its military capacity reduced to nothing. The human fleet had lost a third of its ships, but they had achieved complete victory, and that was just one of 12 simultaneous attacks. Across the Krathix Empire, the story repeated itself with minor variations. Human forces struck military targets with surgical precision, avoiding civilian casualties but showing no mercy to any military installation. They used tactics that civilized warfare had long abandoned, treating space combat like the old Earth naval battles, where ramming and boarding were viable options. The Krathiks tried to rally their forces, pulling back from frontier positions to defend core worlds. But humanity had studied their empire carefully during 40 years of peaceful observation. Human intelligence knew where every military base was located, understood the logistics networks that supplied them, and had calculated the response times for reinforcements. On the 5th day of the war, the Krathiks Emperor broadcast a message calling for negotiations. The human response was simple and direct. They ignored him completely and continued their offensive. On the 10th day, the Krathiks tried to surrender to the Galactic Assembly, asking for protection under assembly laws. The Council of Seven agreed to mediate, calling for an immediate ceasefire. Humanity's response arrived 3 hours later in the form of a single text transmission. There is no assembly. There is no law. There is only what you taught us, might makes right. We will accept surrender only when the Krathiks Empire no longer exists as a military power. On the 15th day, human forces encircled the Krathiks' homeworld. The planet's defensive fleet, once the pride of the Empire, had been reduced to scattered remnants. The Emperor sent another message, this time directly to Earth, offering territorial concessions, war reparations, and complete withdrawal from disputed space. Admiral Richardson, commanding the human fleet from his flagship Remembrance, read the message and then looked at the holographic display showing the Krathiks' homeworld below. Broadcast to all Krathiks military frequencies, he ordered. Full surrender. Complete disarmament. War crime tribunals for those who ordered the attack on the New Dawn. These terms are not negotiable. They have 6 hours to comply. The Krathiks Emperor accepted the terms 5 hours and 58 minutes later. The Krathiks Empire, which had existed for 3,000 years and ruled over 40 star systems, surrendered completely to humanity 17 days after the war. Began. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as human forces occupied Krathiks' military installations and began the systematic dismantling of their war machine. News broadcasts showed Krathiks warriors, proud soldiers who had conquered a dozen species, laying down their weapons before human marines. The images were surreal, impossible, wrong in every way that civilized species understood. But humanity was not finished. Not even close. On the 20th day after leaving the assembly, human forces appeared at the borders of 5 different species, all of whom had voted to support the Krathiks' claims and the punishment of humanity. Each species received the same message. You voted to take our worlds. You voted to punish us for seeking justice. You celebrated when our civilians were murdered. Now you will answer for those choices. Surrender your military forces or be destroyed. You have 24 hours. The Council of Seven convened an emergency session, calling upon humanity to stop this aggression. Ambassador Chen, who had returned to Earth after walking out of the assembly, sent a response that was broadcast across every human channel and picked up by news services galaxy-wide. The Council asks us to stop, to show mercy, to remember the laws of civilized warfare. But the Council forgot something important. They forgot that laws only matter when they are applied equally. They forgot that civilization is a mutual agreement, one that they broke when they chose power over justice. Humanity is not being uncivilized. We are simply no longer pretending that civilization exists in a galaxy where might makes right, and the powerful can murder the weak without consequence. 2 of the 5 species surrendered immediately. The other 3 chose to fight, confident that the galaxy would come to their aid, that the great powers would not allow humanity to continue this rampage. They were wrong. The great powers were already calculating how to appease humanity, how to avoid becoming the next target. Self-interest, the same force that had made them ignore justice, now made them abandon their allies. The 3 species that chose to fight lasted, on average, 11 days each. Human forces moved through their territories with the same brutal efficiency they had shown against the Krathiks. They targeted military installations, destroyed shipyards, and eliminated any capacity to wage war. Civilian populations were mostly left alone, but military forces were crushed without hesitation. By the time 2 months had passed since the walkout, humanity had effectively neutered 6 different species' military capabilities. Human-controlled space had expanded by 40%, and species across the galaxy were beginning to realize a terrifying truth. Humanity was not trying to conquer the galaxy. They were destroying anyone who had wronged them, and making sure that no one would be in a position to threaten them again, and they were doing it with a speed and efficiency that suggested they had been planning for this possibility since the day they joined the assembly. On Earth, Prime Minister Okonkwo addressed her people for the first time since the war began. Her speech was simple and direct. "We came to the galaxy in peace. We asked only for justice and equality. The galaxy responded with mockery and murder, so we have taught them a lesson they will never forget. Humanity stands alone now, but we stand strong. And anyone who threatens us will learn what our ancestors knew, that there is nothing more dangerous than a human who has nothing left to lose." The broadcast ended, but the message was clear. Humanity was no longer asking to be accepted by the galactic community. They were carving out their own space, building their own order, and daring anyone to try to stop them. The galaxy watched in terror and wondered what they had unleashed. The human advance had stopped, and that somehow made the galaxy more nervous than when it had been happening. For 3 weeks, human forces held their positions at the borders of newly occupied territories. Ships patrolled the boundaries of what humans now called the Terran Cordon, a massive zone of space that encompassed over 200 star systems. Inside the cordon, humanity was building something new. Occupied species found themselves under military administration, but it was not the brutal occupation many had feared. Human forces provided security, maintained infrastructure, and surprisingly, began helping rebuild what the wars had destroyed. Medical supplies flowed to worlds that had been blockaded. Food shipments arrived at stations that had been cut off from trade routes. It was confusing. Conquerors were supposed to exploit and enslave, not heal and feed. The galaxy did not know what to make of it. But outside the cordon, the remaining free species were terrified. The Council of Seven, now operating from a backup facility after humanity had seized Apex Prime Station, tried desperately to organize a response. They called it the Grand Coalition, a united front of every species that still had military capacity and feared human expansion. The coalition took 4 months to assemble, slowed by endless debates about command structure, resource allocation, and who would bear the greatest risk. In that time, humanity fortified their positions, built new shipyards and occupied systems, and trained their forces in tactics that the galaxy was still trying to understand. When the Grand Coalition finally assembled at the coordinates designated as the Threshold Nebula, it was the largest military force ever gathered in galactic history. Over 1 million ships from 300 species, crewed by beings who had finally understood that they faced an existential threat. If humanity was not stopped here, they might not be stopped at all. Supreme Arbiter Velthor, his crystalline form broadcasting from the Coalition flagship, addressed the assembled fleet. "Today we correct the mistake of underestimating humanity," he announced. "Today we show them that the civilized galaxy, when united, cannot be defeated by barbarism and aggression. Today we take back the peace they shattered." The Coalition fleet moved forward into the nebula, sensors at maximum range, weapons charged and ready. Intelligence suggested the human fleet waiting for them numbered less than 200,000 ships. The math was simple, 5-to-1 odds in the Coalition's favor. Victory seemed certain. The human fleet waited in the heart of the nebula, using the dense gas and dust to mask their exact positions. Admiral Richardson stood on the bridge of the Remembrance, watching his tactical displays with the patience of a hunter. Around him, his officers worked in near silence, the kind of quiet efficiency that came from months of combat. "They are coming straight at us," reported his tactical officer. No subtlety, no attempt at flanking. "They think their numbers are enough." "They probably are," Richardson said calmly. "But numbers only matter if you can bring them to bear effectively. Activate the network." Throughout the human fleet, systems came online that the galaxy had never seen before. Humanity had spent 40 years in the assembly learning, observing, and most importantly, developing technologies that the complacent elder species had ignored. While the galaxy had perfected energy weapons and shields, humanity had been experimenting with something the other species considered outdated: artificial intelligence. Not the simple computer systems that ran ships and stations, but true AI, thinking machines that could process tactical data faster than any biological mind. The assembly had banned such technology centuries ago, fearing it would lead to a machine uprising. Humanity had looked at that ban and decided it did not apply to them anymore. The human fleet moved as one organism, each ship connected through quantum networks to a distributed AI system that calculated trajectories, predicted enemy movements and coordinated responses in real time. Where the coalition saw 1,000,000 individual ships trying to work together, humanity had created a single unified intelligence directing a smaller, but perfectly coordinated force. The battle began when the coalition fleet entered the nebula's densest region. Human ships struck from multiple angles simultaneously, using the nebula's interference to mask their approach. Railgun slugs tore through coalition formations, each shot calculated for maximum efficiency. Human missiles, guided by AI systems that could predict evasive maneuvers before they happened, found their targets with impossible accuracy. The coalition tried to use their superior numbers, attempting to overwhelm human positions through sheer weight of firepower, but the human fleet refused to fight the way the coalition expected. Ships that took critical damage would retreat immediately, replaced by fresh vessels from reserve positions. Damaged human ships were not left to die. Recovery vessels, protected by fierce defensive screens, would pull them out of combat and begin repairs even as the battle raged. They are fighting as if every life has value, observed Velthor, watching the battle unfold from his command center. How can they maintain such efficiency while caring about individual losses? His tactical advisor, a military genius from the Vorn Collective, studied the displays with growing horror. They are not fighting like a fleet, he said quietly. They are fighting like a single organism. Every ship knows what every other ship is doing. There is no communication delay, no confusion, no conflicting orders. Supreme Arbiter, I think they have developed true artificial intelligence. That is illegal, Velthor said automatically. They no longer care about our laws. The battle raged for 18 hours, and slowly, impossibly, the coalition began to lose. Human tactics were simply better. Their coordination was perfect, and their willingness to sacrifice when necessary, combined with their equal determination to save their own when possible, created a fighting force unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Coalition ships began to surrender in small groups at first, then larger formations. When a Krellian battle group of 15,000 ships lowered their shields and broadcast surrender codes, the rest of the coalition realized the battle was lost. The final count was devastating. The Grand Coalition had lost 300,000 ships destroyed and another 600,000 captured or surrendered. The remaining ships scattered, jumping to hyperspace in random directions, desperate to escape. The human fleet had lost 40,000 ships, a casualty rate that should have been catastrophic. But humanity had planned for this. Reserve forces were already moving forward to replace losses. New construction was coming online from shipyards that worked around the clock. The galaxy was learning what humans had known since their earliest days, that war was not about winning battles without losses, but about being able to sustain losses and keep fighting. Admiral Richardson broadcast a message to the fleeing coalition forces, one that was picked up by every news service and relay station in the galaxy. You came here to destroy us. You failed. You can go home and tell your people that humanity gave you a chance to surrender before the battle. Hundreds of thousands of your people are alive as prisoners because we offered mercy when we could have shown none. Remember this. We are not monsters. We are not conquerors. We are a people who asked for justice, were denied, and decided to take it for ourselves. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was harder. But remember also that we can do this again, and again, and again, for as long as necessary. We will not stop until every species in this galaxy understands that humanity will never bow, will never surrender, and will never accept being treated as lesser beings. Go home, tell them what you saw here. Tell them that the age of the Council of Seven is over. The broadcast ended, and the survivors of the Grand Coalition fled into the dark, carrying with them the news that would reshape the galaxy. The greatest military force ever assembled had been broken by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive. On Earth, Prime Minister Okonkwo received the news of victory with no celebration, just a tired nod. How many did we lose? She asked. 40,000 ships, approximately 250,000 casualties with another 100,000 wounded. Okonkwo closed her eyes, feeling the weight of those numbers. Each casualty was a person, someone's child or parent or friend. They had died because the galaxy had refused to treat humanity as equals. Make sure their families know they died defending everything we are, she said quietly, and prepare the next phase. It is time to build something better than what we tore down. The war was not over, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. Humanity had proven they could not be defeated by force. Now they would prove they could build something worth preserving. 2 years had passed since Ambassador Chen walked out of the Galactic Assembly, and the galaxy barely resembled what it had been before. The old order, built on the authority of the Council of Seven and maintained through power and tradition, had collapsed. In its place, something new was emerging, built on principles that most species were still struggling to understand. Humanity controlled 40% of the galaxy's inhabited systems. The Terran Cordon had become the Terran Compact, and species that once fought against human expansion were now, surprisingly, asking to join it. The reason was simple. Life inside the Compact was better than life outside it. On the former Krathix fortress world of Dex Prime, war leader Kesh walked through streets that had been rebuilt in the 2 years since the war. Human engineers had worked alongside Krathix civilians to restore what the battles had destroyed. New buildings stood where orbital strikes had left craters. Parks had been planted where military installations once loomed. Kesh stopped at a memorial that had been erected in the central plaza. It listed the names of both Krathix and human casualties from the war, making no distinction between victor and vanquished. At the bottom, an inscription in both languages read, "May those who died teaching this lesson be the last to die from its ignorance." "It still feels wrong," said Ven, his former tactical officer who now served in the local defense force, a mixed unit of Krathix and human soldiers. "They defeated us, occupied our world, and now they help us rebuild. I do not understand humans." "Neither do I," Kesh admitted, "but I am beginning to think that is the point. They do not want us to understand them. They want us to understand ourselves and what we did wrong." Inside the Compact, the rules were simple but revolutionary. Every species had equal representation, regardless of age, population, or power. Decisions required consensus, not majority rule, forcing species to actually talk to each other and find common ground. Military force could only be used defensively, and any aggressive action required approval from a joint military council that included representatives from every member species. Most radical of all, the Compact operated on a principle the old assembly had long forgotten, that laws applied equally to everyone. When a human officer was found guilty of looting during the occupation of a Krelian world, she was court-martialed and sentenced to prison by a mixed tribunal. The trial was broadcast across the Compact, and the message was clear. Humanity would hold itself to the same standards it demanded from others. Outside the Compact, the galaxy struggled. The Council of Seven, stripped of most of their power and territory, still tried to maintain the fiction that they were the legitimate galactic authority. They operated from a hidden location, issuing decrees that fewer and fewer species followed. Species outside the Compact found themselves isolated, their trade routes disrupted, their security dependent on alliances that were increasingly fragile. One by one, they began to apply for membership in the Compact. Each application went through a rigorous process that examined the species' history, their treatment of other species, and their willingness to accept the Compact's principles. Some were accepted quickly. Others were told they needed to make changes first, provided with a list of reforms, and offered assistance in implementing them. It was manipulation on a galactic scale, but it was also genuine. Humanity had learned that you could not force peace. You could only create conditions where peace was more beneficial than war. On the station that had once been Apex Prime, and now served as the Terran Compact headquarters, preparations were underway for the first meeting of the new Galactic Assembly. Over 200 species had joined the Compact in the 2 years since its founding, and today they would gather to formally establish the new order. Ambassador Chen, now serving as the Compact's first speaker, walked through the renovated assembly chamber. The circular tiers remained, but they had been modified so that no seat was higher than any other. The Council of Seven's elevated platform had been removed, replaced by a central space where any delegate could speak. "It still feels strange," said Admiral Richardson, who had retired from military service to become humanity's chief delegate. 2 years ago we were at war with half these species. Now we are asking them to help us govern. "War was easy," Chen replied. "We knew what needed to be done and we did it. Peace is harder. We have to convince them that working together is better than competing, that helping each other is smarter than exploiting each other. It goes against every instinct that the old system taught them. Do you think it will work?" Chen looked at the empty chamber, imagining it filled with delegates from across the galaxy. "It has to work," she said quietly, "because the alternative is returning to the old system, and we have proven that we will burn the galaxy down before we accept that again." The delegates began arriving hours later, filling the chamber with a rainbow of colors and shapes. The atmosphere was tense, uncertain. Many of these species had fought against humanity and lost. Others had remained neutral, watching to see which side would win. A few had joined humanity early, betting on the newcomers and finding themselves rewarded with trade agreements and protection. When the chamber was full, Chen walked to the central speaking area. She wore the same simple gray suit she had worn 2 years ago, refusing the elaborate robes that some had suggested for the first speaker. Humanity's message remained consistent: substance over ceremony, equality over hierarchy. 2 years ago, I stood in a different chamber and asked for justice, Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the space. I was told that justice did not apply to humanity, that we needed to learn our place in the galactic order. So we left that chamber and we taught the galaxy a different lesson. She paused, looking around at the assembled delegates. We taught you that power without justice is tyranny. We taught you that might makes right only until someone mightier comes along. We taught you that dismissing the young and weak is how empires sow the seeds of their own destruction. These were hard lessons, and many died in the teaching. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably, remembering those deaths. Others nodded slightly, acknowledging the truth. But we also learned something, Chen continued. We learned that destruction is easy, but building is hard. We learned that revenge feels good in the moment, but leaves you empty afterward. We learned that the only way to truly be safe is to create a galaxy where everyone is safe, where everyone is heard, where everyone is treated as equals. She gestured to the chamber around them. This is why we built the compact, not to replace one empire with another, but to create something genuinely new, a system where species are judged by their actions, not their age, where laws apply to everyone equally, where force is used only to defend, never to conquer, where the strong help the weak instead of exploiting them. Chen's expression hardened slightly. But make no mistake, this system only works if everyone commits to it. If species join the compact thinking they can manipulate it, thinking they can use it as a shield while preparing for war, thinking they can pretend to follow the rules while plotting to restore the old order, they will find that humanity has not forgotten how to fight. We have proven we can destroy. We would rather build, but we will do what is necessary to protect what we have created. The chamber was silent. Then slowly delegates began to stand, a sign of respect and agreement in many cultures. Within moments, the entire assembly was on its feet, acknowledging the truth of Chen's words. In a private viewing room above the chamber, the Council of Seven watched the ceremony. They had been invited as observers, a courtesy that many said was more than they deserved. Felthor, his crystalline form dimmer than it had been 2 years ago, watched humanity's former enemies stand and applaud. We made them into this, he said quietly. If we had simply listened, if we had treated them fairly, none of this would have happened. Do you think they will come for us? Asked Zix, the floating mass of tentacles that had once spoken so dismissively of human concerns. I think they will let us come to them, replied Kresh, the reptilian who had told humanity to learn its place. They will wait for us to ask to join their compact, to accept their rules, to admit that we were wrong. It may be the cruelest punishment they could devise, forcing us to acknowledge our mistakes and beg for inclusion in the system we destroyed. Perhaps it is what we deserve, Velthor said. Below, the assembly continued. Delegates from across the galaxy stood and spoke, sharing their experiences with the compact, proposing new initiatives, debating the details of governance. It was messy and loud and sometimes frustrating, but it was also real. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy was actually governing itself through cooperation rather than coercion. Ambassador Chen watched it all with exhaustion and pride mixed together. They had come so far from that day when she walked out of the old assembly. The cost had been high, measured in hundreds of thousands of lives and the destruction of empires that had lasted millennia. But something better was being built from the ruins. As the first session of the Terran Compact Assembly came to a close, Chen delivered one final statement, one that would be quoted and debated for generations.